Welcome back to The Inspired Entrepreneur with Heather Hope. Hey, this is Heather Hope. Welcome back to another episode of The Inspired Entrepreneur. So today is September 26th, and I have already posted today's episode. So I've been inspired ever since I woke up this morning to do an episode, a special one. There's going to be a few of these sprinkled in here and there of specific manifestations. The most important ones that I have manifested, I'm going to do a separate episode on. So today, in honor of my husband's birthday, I'm going to talk about the manifestation of our relationship based on primarily my perspective, because he and I have, compared notes, and, since this is a co-creation on his end, there's just a couple of things that I may mention that he's said when we have gone through this. I just took a nap. I felt like kind of going out of my usual schedule today, and I left the house at noon, did some shopping, came back, had lunch, and then I was really, really tired. I'm like, well, this isn't working today. So I said, okay, I'm going to go take a nap, and then I'm going to wake up refreshed and do some podcasting and more editing of my book. And then I'm recording this yesterday, Friday. And so in honor, because I don't want to do anything on his birthday. We're going to just spend the day doing whatever he wants to do. Okay, so here we go. So my husband and I, we got married last year my husband's name is Roger, and we got married July 13th of last year, so 2019. So we've been married just over a year. We started dating May 13th, 2017. So we've been together for about 3 years and 4 months, something like that. But we have known each other since we first met in 2009. I think it was probably in May or June of 2009. And we've been friends ever since. We've been good friends ever since. We've been he is the guy I started talking about. I did talk a lot about this in the last in 1 or 2 episodes this week, and I said I needed to do this as a separate thing. So we've known each other since then, so just over 11 years, and we were completely platonic friends up until 2017, basically. Completely friend zoned. I friend zoned him. And he's just one of those guys. He's one of those really good guys that he likes females, certain friends of his over the many years. And there was just he just always ended up in the friend zone. And it's just one of those things. It's one of those vibrations, right? So if you think, even though I don't think I'm sure there was some underlying thing that he didn't realize that he was thinking or believing, but maybe there was. I never got into it with him, but I know he was always very hopeful of dating certain, friends of his or women that he knew that he hung out with. He would take them out to ball games and dinner, stuff like that. And it was always not a date for them. It was just always that way. And so he and I, we were friends. He was friends with my ex-husband. They had worked together prior to me knowing either one of them. And so there was for many years, ever since we've known each other, and ever since I was dating my ex-husband, I would call Roger my surrogate boyfriend, whether that made any sense or not. But anytime my ex and I broke up, I would go hang out with Roger. meaning like we would go see a movie like Sex in the City, or go have a drink, because we met each other at a bar. So there was a bit of drinking back then. It was like my year. I was 34, fresh out of a 14-year relationship. I never went through a party phase in my life until I turned 34, and it was just that I discovered, this social life at this little bar that I went to. And the manifestation of even that bar is a whole amazing story of another guy friend of mine that he introduced me to that bar, while I was breaking up with my ex at that time. And so it's a really cool, like, ton of circumstances and events that led me to that bar, that I met my ex-husband and I met my next husband, my current husband, if that makes, yeah, that's pretty funny, huh? So there's absolutely nothing wrong with meeting somebody at a bar. I've done it many times. And you can find some good people, because depending on why they're there. I had a lot of friends. It was like Cheers, everybody knew each other, and it was just so much fun. And I had, probably one of the better years of my life was that year, when I was just hanging out, just really being single and meeting a lot of people. And then I started dating my ex-husband. And so anytime he and I broke up, I would go hang out over there, or just, talk to my friend Roger, and we'd go see a movie or something, and just totally as friends, because he was just so, there was something about him. He just has a really great character about him. And he's, very trustworthy. I'm sure every female that was friends with him, that friend zoned him, just felt pretty safe with him. He was just that guy that you just knew, nothing was going to happen. He wasn't going to try anything. You can be pretty intoxicated around him, and he would never touch you. You know what I mean? He would make sure he would stay with you until you get a ride, that sort of thing. That's the kind of character that my husband has. And so going, I remember anytime I saw him. So this is looking back over the years, after we started dating, I started just realizing all the times that I would see him, invite him somewhere to a party or something, and I would be really happy to see him. So it was just one of those things where he's just a good guy. He's a really, really good guy. So, ladies, there are really good men out there. I went through a lot of not so great men, and I talked about that this week. Of that my vibration for a while after my divorce was that I was attracting a lot of married men, and it was just a vibrational belief, a thing that I kept affirming. I kept thinking, God, I'm attracting a lot of married men, and if you keep doing that, like, say something happens once or twice, and then it becomes like a thing for you, right? It just becomes, gosh, that's all I'm attracting. I only attract married men. And it just becomes, and think of all the other things in your life that you do that with. So anytime you catch yourself saying something about something that you don't really like, that you would like to stop, you have to stop saying it. As the first step, stop saying it. So when I realized this at the time, I stopped it. So because I was attracting and dating and meeting a lot of men during this time. So this was after my divorce. So this was between 2016 and 2017. So about a year and a half, I was single. It was the longest time I've had ever been single, a year and a half. And I was dating a lot for a while. But they just were not the greatest matches, like, at all. Not many. There was just probably a couple that were, probably about 3 that were hopeful, but it was just a different time. I didn't know anything about Abraham Hicks. Like I said this week, there was a lot of things that I really, if I went back in time knowing what I know now, I could have cleaned up all of this vibration very quickly. and I would have had a much better successful dating time had I known what I know now. So it just makes all the world of difference when you know how to be and how to feel while dating. And let me know in the comment section, wherever this is, if you want to know more about dating and how to like attract the right person, how to be, how to feel, how to do all that stuff, because it's so vital. To get that attraction point that is in alignment with what you want is just vital to have a really successful dating life. So looking back, there was one time, okay, it was after I left my ex that I met up with Roger for drinks. We hadn't seen each other in probably a couple of years. And we had some drinks, and since he was in Phoenix and I was up where I am now, which is an hour away. And he was down in Scottsdale. So I stayed the night at his house, and I drove home the next day. And so that night, this was in 2016, we slept in his bed, and he held me. And so we had been completely platonic all these years and still totally, innocent and all this stuff. But we slept together, like in his arms. We slept. We actually slept. And I remember that felt so right. It felt so nice and so good. And he felt the same way. And it was just so surprising to both of us. And that was basically it. And then, I went home and we talked for a while, we texted for a few weeks, and he got very busy. He was taking care of his parents that were elderly and sick and having a stroke. And, both of them were just having issues. And I was home taking care of my grandmother. So we were both in the same exact boat. So it was really difficult for either of us to actually date anyone. But so it was just this new thing, and it kind of just fizzled out. It just didn't go anywhere. He was busy. I was busy. Like, we were legit busy taking care of, being caregivers to our people. And so that just kind of fizzled out. And I was dating, some other people, and one, anyway. So nothing happened. And that was that. So fast forward to May of 2017. I spoke about this week about how, trying to get rid of that whole vibration of attracting married men. Like, it was so bad that after a date, I would find out that the guy was married, and it was just multiple of reasons, just so many reasons why, they'd lie to me, and just really bizarre stuff, really bizarre stories they would tell me. One guy told me that his wife had died, and she didn't. She contacted me like a month or two later, asking if I knew him. And I'm like, yeah, I do. I did. I saw him one time. And it was just really shocking. It was such a bad, time of dating, because it was just one lie after another. And so I just stopped it all. I stopped all the crazy dating. I was just done. I was so, when you're just done with something, you're just like, I can't do this anymore. This is getting outrageously stupid. And so I remember it just kind of digging into what people say about like loving yourself and being happy. And this is still before I knew about Abraham Hicks. And So I stopped. I stopped everybody. Everybody I was seeing, everybody that I was talking to, everybody that I had been, that, it had been going on for months of just back and forth and trying to get something together and not. And I blocked certain people. I changed my phone number and I said, enough. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to date anyone anymore. So, so I started really loving myself. I said no to hookups, or booty calls or whatever they were back then with certain people that I was, and I just said no, I'm done. And it felt so powerful for me to do that. I felt so empowered to just say no to everybody and start saying yes to me. I know that sounds so cliche, but it was honestly what I did. And it was so amazing. So I did that. I just did me. And so I bought myself flowers. I did my nails. I just became happy with myself, by myself. And for the first time, I was living alone. I didn't have anyone else here except for my grandmother. So I was taking care of her full time, which was a full time job. But besides that, it was just me and her. And I was so happy. I became really happy that I let go of all of this BS of all these men and this just web I got caught up in. And, if somebody did try to get a hold of me, I just didn't care anymore. I was just happy. And to the point where, how it's like the better it gets, the better it gets. That's how it felt. I was so happy being single. So happy. And a lot of times, what people fear is that once you get happy with something, then that's just the way it's going to be, and that's not what they want. You know what I mean? So if it's like, if I'm happy being single, won't I just be single forever? No, not necessarily. Because what you have in the vortex will come to you. So what happened was for about 6 weeks, this only took about 6 weeks, from going from dating all these people, attracting all these people that were just not great, lying, just fresh out of prison, like the most bizarrest stories. And I'm like, honestly, I left my ex-husband for this. You know what I mean? Because he wasn't the worst person in the world. And I was meeting some like worse people than him. And I'm like, this is crazy, crazy town. So I didn't, I even got back together with my ex-husband like twice during that year and a half. But it was like short-lived, like one day or a couple of days, because then I remembered why we broke up, and I'm like, okay, never mind. I forget it. I forgot for a minute because he turned on the charm. So I got happy, legit happy, super happy of being single, super happy not dealing with bullshit from anybody. And that was it. So what happened was I got this impulse, just this normal thought. Roger and I had been talking here and there, like we're both busy at home. We're an hour away from each other. We hadn't seen each other since, the year prior. So it's been a year since we saw each other. And we had talked like maybe a month or two prior of, him coming up here just to get away from his, kind of like a little tiny mini vacation from his house, from caretaking, and just as friends, totally just as friends. And it just wasn't working out, wasn't, whatever. It was kind of like just this pipe dream for him, I guess. Like he could actually get away from his responsibilities. And so there was this one night, it was May 12th, 2017. And I just got this impulse, and I sent him this message that says, I want to see you. And he said back, he's like, okay, like when? And he was thinking like in a week or two or something. And I said, tomorrow. I want to see you tomorrow. And so he's like, okay. And so I was just going to go to his house. That was it. Like, just go see him. I don't know. And he turned it into dinner because he's a insane, massive um, gentleman. So he turned it into dinner. So I showed up on his doorstep. He looked totally different than he had looked before. And he just didn't have a haircut for like a long time. So he had long hair, which is so bizarre. He had glasses that I'd never seen him with glasses on since I've known him. He just looked so different. It was so funny. And it was kind of cool. And so we got into the car and we went to dinner. And that, when we were sitting there, I met a couple of his friends that were at the restaurant. And I was just like, yeah, I am so done with men and I don't want a relationship and all this stuff. I was just so, and he's just like, oh, wow, okay. And anyway, long story short, that night we kissed. For me, it wasn't necessarily a date. It was kind of like that whole, I'm not quite sure what it was. I don't think I thought it was a date. I think he thought it was a date, one of those things. I think that was kind of like the way that he was. He always thought things were dates, but not necessarily the other person thought it was a date. So it was kind of a running joke that we have now. But so we kissed. And while we were kissing, I had this feeling come over me. This absolute knowing. There was no doubt that if this continued, that I was going to fall in love with him. I'd never felt that way with any man in my life. And it was so almost surreal, just, I don't know. It was just, when you know something. I don't know if I honestly feel like I know, like absolute know something all that often, like absolute knowing that this is going to happen. And I just knew that night. It was May 13th, 2017, our first official first date. We say it's our first or second first date. I think that's what we call it. We say the other one was our first date. Well, no, we say this one is. But anyway, so that was it. And so it was just an impulse. While I was happy, being single, being to myself, I got this impulse to text him. Now, I've said it in the past. I've said it so many times that almost everything that has been big, like important to me that I've manifested came from a thought to text somebody. And when I do that in that moment of having that feeling, I manifest it instantly. And it's been so surreal. So anytime I'm feeling good, like really good or just good or whatever, and I have this thought to text somebody to ask them something, I do it because I know. It's kind of like when I get this massive impulse to go to California for something. It's this major this particular, I mean, when I go to California, it's usually I'm super excited to go, and something amazing happens when I go. It's happened so many times. So it's one of those things. I look back and almost everything came from, almost everything important to me came from a text message or an email. And so that was that. So my husband had been single for about 30 years, I think. He just turned 58. He had been single for nearly 30 years. And because he got his heart broken 30 years ago from his ex-girlfriend. And, he kind of went on this thing of not caring. And, trying to date certain women in his life, and it just never worked out. Nothing ever worked out. And so here he is. And I'm like, did you ever, looking back, I'm like, did you ever think, because now you're married, and did you ever think you would get married? Because you had to have that, like, belief somehow or something, right? To end up, being, not in a being single for 30 years and then be married all of a sudden. And he's like, he said he always thought that he would get married one day. He always thought he would. Even though, he's in his 50s and he still doesn't have a girlfriend. So it's amazing what our beliefs, do. So, and let me tell you, he's the most amazing husband ever. Even though he was single for 30 years, what he did was he paid attention to what all of his guy friends were doing and what wasn't working, what worked and what doesn't work. All the years that he hung out with all these guys, all of his friends, because he's one of those guys that everybody knows and everybody likes him. And, male, female, whatever, everybody like in Phoenix, in his little area, which is where I grew up. We actually grew up a mile away from each other, too. Went to the same middle school, 13 years apart. We're 13 years apart. And we crossed each other's paths probably hundreds of times in our years because we grew up in the same neighborhood. And which is really cool. There's so many like synchronicities and like just so many cool things when we went back in the past. It's like, oh my gosh, like literally he used to walk past my house when I was a year old. He used to walk past my house. I was at this one house for the first 2 years of my life, and he was on his way to middle school, which is the middle school I went to 13 years later. It's just these little cool things. Northeast Phoenix, Scottsdale area, So anyway, so he's the person that everybody knows. And so it's amazing. So he would watch what his friends would do and kind of take a mental note of like, well, that was stupid. Don't do that. And this is the reaction you're going to get if you talk like that or do this, or, the deception that goes on with certain people, that sort of thing. So he learned, that's my dog scratching the carpet. He learned what to do, what not to do, how to be, how not to be, how to be a good guy. His parents, Gizmo, good Lord. His parents were married for 55 years and, had a great relationship. So he ends up being this amazing, amazing husband. He was an amazing boyfriend and fiance and husband. So, when you look at, because you can judge people, right? Like, look in your friend zoned guys. Look in, the guys that you friend zoned for whatever stupid reason. Sometimes they are legit reasons, but sometimes you may have friend zoned a perfectly good guy. But, we judge people like, thinking, oh, a guy who's been single for 30 years, how could he possibly even know how to be a good husband? Well, he is. You can't judge that. He's just, anyway, he's the best husband. He's just in every category there is. He's absolutely the best. And so it's just amazing how, there's certain things like when we're in relationships or, jobs or whatever it is, and there's something that we don't like about that, say a person, we put it in the vortex immediately of what it is that we do want. And so many of the characteristics of him are the opposite of my ex-husband. Like the just complete opposite. It's the opposite in the good way of what I wanted. And there he is. Like all the good things are in him. And it's just really, it's amazing. Like the better it gets of if you just love yourself, feel happy, be happy, you'll attract exactly what you want just by doing that. And back when I was like love coaching and all this stuff, kind of still before I even know about Abraham, I would still do like the whole like, okay, you got to make a list of all the characteristics that you want. You don't have to do anything. You legit don't have to do any of that. All you have to do is love yourself. Because if you love yourself, you're going to attract a guy who loves you. If you are happy, you will attract a happy person. So it's all based on your point of attraction. Now, I've heard Abraham talk about, like, if you're in this low moment, like just low moment, say for example, you get off work and you're just in this terrible mood. You had a terrible day at work. Everything went wrong. And you go to the store to buy a bottle of wine or whatever, and you're just in this nasty mood. You're in this bad mood. And you meet somebody and you kind of connect at that point. Most likely, almost always, you're going to, in that moment, attract wherever you like. It's attraction. So you can't meet like an amazing person when you're in a bad mood, because your attraction point is a bad mood, negative feelings, all this stuff, right? That's your attraction point. So don't go to the bar when you're in a really bad place. If you do, don't hook up with anybody. Don't date anybody. Don't do anything like that. Go to the bar when you're feeling you're in a good place. Go to a singles thing. Whatever you're doing, go in a good feeling place. Like, get into that good feeling place before you do anything. Before you meet the next person, feel good and happy with yourself. And that is how you attract an amazing person. You have to be that amazing person to attract that amazing person. And trust me, like, I've gone through the gamut of relationships, and it's just so, it can be so easy. It can be so easy. Like I said, I went from dating all of these just liars and cheaters and all of this stuff, and within 6 weeks, I started dating my husband just from that. Because, all these years I had been, dating somebody like my ex-husband or other people like him. And Roger wasn't like that. He wasn't that attraction point. We never met up vibrationally because we were in separate places. Like, I remember he told me after we started dating, he said, there was times that I would leave, like if my ex-husband and I were together, there would always be a fight. There'd be some kind of fight. My ex-husband was very jealous and just hated anything that went on. And like, Roger wouldn't want to be any part of that. He wouldn't want to be around that negativity, because he's just more of almost kind of like a happy-go-lucky kind of simple guy that just wants to have, feel good and have a good time and enjoy himself. And that's not where my ex-husband and I were. We were playing that stupid toxic game that people play. So you attract where your attraction point is. So, in honor of his birthday, that's basically, there's a lot of other little things about it, but that was essentially it. It was a very kind of surprising thing that I could go from, and my first boyfriend that I was with for 14 years, it wasn't a bad relationship at all. He's still in my life very much, and very good friends, and nothing toxic about it. Just kind of totally fizzled out, and we were just friends for many years. So, but, going from, a low point, and then I started dating from that point, and just attracted from that point. And it just went on. It went on for years to do that. And then I stopped. When I stopped and loved myself and just said no to everything else but me, when I got that selfishness of, I'm looking out for me and that's it, all the rest of you can just deal with your own life, that was it. So that's it. Stop everything. Stop the, the mindset of I only attract douchebags or I only, whatever that is. Say, you know what? What I really want to attract is a really good guy or a really good girl, whatever it is, right? I just want to attract a really good person. So I'm going to be that really good person and just be super selfish for myself and really take good care of myself. And the rest will work itself out. Okay, guys. So, in honor of my husband's birthday, happy birthday, Roger. I love you. And you are the best husband ever. So, okay, guys. So, have a really great day. And I will talk to you again tomorrow. Bye bye.